This is the new Sony 50mm f1.4 and it's $1,300. It's a really versatile lens that I love. It lets in a lot of light, it gives you some background blur, it's good for portraits, it's good for street photography.
I also think it's fantastic for sports courtside. You need that big fast lens in order to get clean images and freeze the subjects. We're going to be comparing it against all these other Sony 50mm lenses, starting with the 50mm f1.8, Sony's nifty 50, that's only 250 bucks. The existing Zeiss 50mm f1.4 that will continue to exist and is actually more expensive, but you don't always get what you pay for.
And then you have the f1.2 for more light, more background blur, but it's also more money at $2,000. Let's see what each one of these does and which one's right for you.
This is a Sony 50mm f1.8. Fantastic plastic, nifty 50, and this is the second lens we recommend everybody get. It's a huge upgrade from your kit lens because it gives you the ability to really blur the background for the first time, gives you much better low light performance. But it's a fun lens. It's not a professional lens. There are some benefits to that. Like, it is 1/3 the weight of the new 50 f1.4 and only about 1/5 the price. So while it's not designed for professional use, a lot of professionals still use it. And it doesn't have the weather sealing of this new lens, but at the same time, you could destroy and rebuy this 5 times for the price of just one of these. So they both have their merits, but this is definitely more lens. This lens is great for beginner sports, but compared to the GM got about twice as many sharp shots. So if you're planning on some indoor basketball or volleyball, you might want to spring for the GM. For sharpness, the GM is significantly sharper, though you won't notice that as much on a lower megapixel camera like the Sony a7 III, for example. If you have a high megapixel camera, the GM is definitely worth it. For other technical qualities like contrast in backlit situations, the GM is definitely worth it, showing more contrast and less flaring. That means it's just more versatile and you don't have to worry about it as much. The GM lens also had less chromatic aberration, but the single biggest difference is going to be the size of the aperture. The GM lens is about 2/3 of a stop faster, and that means you'll see about 2/3 less noise in low light situations. And it means you'll get bigger, rounder bokeh balls when you do want that subject separation, like between me and the background here right now. Speaking of shooting into the sun, I love to raise my f-stop to the highest f-stop number and make the sun into little starbursts. If you're gonna do this, the GM is much better. Not only is there less flaring, but the GM lens has more aperture blades, 11 of them. So you see 22 spikes coming out of the sun. It's an easy way to add a focal point to an image. If you don't yet have a fast 50 prime, pick up the 50 f1.8. It's a great starter lens. But if you're a professional or you want professional results, the GM is definitely worth the extra money.
The older Zeiss f1.4 is older, more expensive, weighs more, and is a larger form factor. If you're interested in sports, you're also going to find that the new G Master gets more shots in focus than this older Zeiss lens. That's when we put them both on the Sony Alpha 1. If you're thinking about the image quality of the lenses, you're going to find that the new G Master is way sharper. Look at these images side by side. If you're thinking about those fine details like chromatic aberration, the difference there isn't as dramatic, but things like starbursts are crispier on the new G Master. Overall, if you're looking to buy one of these two lenses, I don't see any reason why you would pick the more expensive, older, bigger, heavier lens that doesn't work as well. I'd say go with the new G Master.
This is the big boy, the 50mm f1.2GM, and it's actually not that much bigger than this new f1.4. You can see they won't take up much more room in your bag, and it only weighs about half a pound more. Still, you do feel the difference, and if you care about lightweight, the 50 f1.4 is going to be the better choice. Honestly, the biggest difference here is going to be the bigger aperture for subject separation. For sharpness, they were basically identical at the center of the image, and at the corners, the f1.2 lens was just a little bit better. For contrast and backlit situations, the f1.4 lens was actually a little bit better. So for image quality, it's kind of a toss-up. For starburst, again, image quality was really just a toss-up. The bokeh on the f1.2 lens shut down to f1.4 was a little bit bigger and a little bit rounder. So in summary, the 50 f1.2 has been our day-to-day lens because I love the flexibility, the ability to open up to f1.2. But if I were shopping now, yeah, I might just get the 50 f1.4 to make it a little bit lighter in my bag, knowing that the capabilities are almost exactly the same. However, if I were going to shoot a sporting event and I wanted the best possible results, I think I'd rent the 50 f1.2 in order to get the extra like 27% of sharp shots. The motors on this, the autofocusing motors, are just that little bit better. But for most people, I say get the 50 f1.4.
Sony is way ahead of the game because Canon and Nikon don't even have a 50mm f1.4 for their mirrorless lineup yet. And now Sony's on their second.
My big takeaway was that the Sony 50mm f1.4 Zeiss lens is now just kind of obsolete. It's more expensive and just objectively worse in just about every way that we could test. But the other lenses, like the nifty 50 f1.8 and the 50 f1.2, they're all worth it at their given price point. So kind of decide what your budget is and how much you weigh, the various ways that we nitpicked it, and just pick the one that you think fits you, because none of them are bad.
Yeah, but that's not it, because we have a full 50mm lineup coming out soon. So subscribe and remember to come back in about a week because we're going to go through all of your options in depth. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions about that review coming up, please put them in the comments down below.
Bye.